April 24, 2012. World and Ukrainian media space stirred by the sensational information. Yulia Tymoshenko complained of injuries that she allegedly received on April 20 during her transportation from Kachanivska prison to the Central Clinical Hospital of Ukrainian Railways in Kharkiv. Her defender, Sergei Vlasenko, told about it, showing to the reporters a letter from ex-Prime Minister in which she talks about what happened to her in the evening on Friday, April 20. Approximately at 9 p.m. they walked away my neighbor from the cell where I was, and sometime later 3 stocky physic men came in, went to my bed, threw a cover on me and began to pull me from the bed with brute force. From pain and despair, I began again to defend myself and got through the cover a strong punch to my stomach. They tied my hands and legs, lifted and pulled me from the building in that cover. I thought it was probably last moments of my life. From the excruciation, back pain and fear, I began to scream and cry for help, but got no help. At some moment of terrible pain, I simply switched off and woke from the stupor already in the hospital. Somehow, from different sources immediately began to appear an information related to these events. Unfortunately, it was difficult to make a clear picture of what happened having only the internet and the information from officials. So we decided to conduct our own investigation to find out what happened in the prison and hospital during these last days. We were sending a few times the relevant appeals to the penal service of Kharkiv region and to the administration of the prison for the permission to talk to the participants of these events, at least those who would like to talk about it. Considering the huge publicity caused by the letter of Mrs. Tymoshenko, the administration finally made advances to us. They let us to get inside the prison, and we were able to talk to the staff of the Central Clinical Hospital of Ukrainian Railways and the medics of the ambulance that saw the most famous prisoner of Kachanivska prison number 54, the 22 of April. We are trying to rebuild the chronology of the events, beginning from Friday, April 20, because we can try to make true and real conclusions based not only on the headlines, but at least create an approximate picture of the situation according to the explanations of its participants. The 20th of April, about 6 p.m., Tymoshenko requests her neighbor Yulia Abaplova to pack her clothes for the future moving to the hospital. Abaplova tells about it herself in a well-known interview on the internet. When about 9 p.m. 3 employees of that prison came into the cell of Yulia Tymoshenko to conduct her to the Central Clinical Hospital number 5 for therapy, she suddenly refused to go. 2 of them was the first deputy head of the prison Andrei Kovalenko and the safety deputy chief Andrei Paramey. The hassle of the ex-prime minister with the man have happened this moment according to the text of letter, and as the result of it, she was carried away from the building in the cover. Tymoshenko wrote that she was unconscious. The ambulance was waiting at the entrance. Duty medics, nurse and the head of medical department of the prison Oleksiy Tsura were waiting in the ambulance car. One of the medics, Alexander Liska, saw how Yulia Tymoshenko was delivered to the ambulance.
У нас была открыта задняя дверь автомобиля, выкатана из автомобиля каталка.
The back door of the car was open. The young man carried on the hands the patient from the door of the prison building to the barrel, laid her on the barrel. The barrel was brought inside the car. She didn't tell anything on our way. She was keeping silence. She was conscious. She was just looking all around her. There was the same shawl on the patient's head as Yulia Tymoshenko has at all her photos. The safety deputy chief of Kachanivska prison number 54, Andrei Paramey, was carrying former prime minister on his hands. He claims that he didn't use any kind of physical force to Yulia Tymoshenko. She went from the room herself.
Я в районе 9 часов прибыл в
About 9 p.m., I came to the room where Tymoshenko stays in the prison. She came herself to the end of the corridor using her walker. She said that she can do it. I was helping her to move the staircase. When we came down, she said she's tired. I carried her through the walking yard, as I did it for many times helping her before, so I rendered her, put her on the barrel of the ambulance car. Andrei Paramey notices that he was carrying Yulia Tymoshenko with his hands before for many times. For example, he was escorting ex-prime minister to hospitals in Kharkiv on January 7 and on February 23. The head of medical department of the prison, Alexei Tsura, saw everything personally himself. I was into the ambulance with Yulia Tymoshenko on her way to the hospital. She was conscious. She didn't make any statements or complaints. She kept silent for the whole way to the hospital. And it was the same when we got to the hospital. She didn't talk, didn't make any statements and was conscious. The ambulance car left the prison about 9 p.m. The road to the hospital takes about 1 hour and a half, according to the information from the employees of the penal service. The car got to the hospital at 10:30 p.m., plus or minus 5 minutes. The nurse executive meets the car.
We moved her from the ambulance to the barrel. The medics from the ambulance car helped me. Then we went to the hospital department. Yulia Tymoshenko was calm, didn't make any complaints during her transportation to the department. She didn't try to communicate with us and told nothing. We asked her no questions.
The employees of the penal service and the medic moved the patient to the hospital department, to the room that was prepared for her. The nurse executive of the department met her there.
At 10:45 p.m., Yulia Tymoshenko was delivered here on the barrel from the emergency department, accompanied by the nurse, the employees of the penal service and the medic from the ambulance car. She was laying on the barrel. We met her in the department, moved her to the room, relayed her from the barrel to the bed.
Мы встретили Юлию Владимировну в нашем отделении, завезли в палату, аккуратненько переложили ее с каталочки на кровать.
According to the rules of our hospital, I had to propose her to measure the temperature and the blood pressure. Yulia Tymoshenko was very polite, very correct, calm and very laconic, but she declined my proposition.
Спокойно, лаконично, но измерять давление и температуру тела она не захотела.
The medical doctor of the department, Irina Fursa, tried to make an initial inspection of the patient.
She was laying on the bed when I asked her if I can to make an initial inspection now. She answered that would like to refrain from any inspections till the meeting with her lawyer.
Она сказала, что до встречи со своим адвокатом воздерживается.
She didn't make any complaints additionally, didn't tell about her state. I could see only her face and her hands. They had a normal color. As the patient didn't let me to examine her, I didn't ask her anymore.
Поэтому, учитывая, что пациентка не отдала разрешение на свой осмотр, соответственно, больше ничего я не спрашивала.
Yulia Tymoshenko was in the hospital room with another prisoner from the Kachanivska prison, Oksana Melnik. She lived together with the ex-prime minister a little bit longer than 1 day and a half. She said that during this time, Yulia Tymoshenko didn't talk to her almost. She was moving from time to time in the room to the table and to the fridge.
She asked me to give her a glass of water to open the window, that's all. When I was in the room, she didn't complain about someone. She was walking, sitting, laying on the bed. She was calm, she was resting. I saw that she was moving in the room, because when I was undergoing the procedures, she came to the table and to the fridge. I don't know what she did there, can't say something about it.
At the same time, Oksana Melnik says she didn't notice any bruises on the body of Yulia Tymoshenko.
Yulia Tymoshenko was wearing blue jeans, the t-shirt with short sleeves. I could see the part of her stomach that was not covered by the clothes, and I didn't see any bruises on her hands and stomach.
Yulia Tymoshenko refused from the hospital food, as well as she refused from the medical inspection of the doctor of the Central Clinical Hospital of Ukrainian Railways. The medical commission, headed by the first Deputy Minister of Health Raisa Moiseyenko, decided to stop her stay in the hospital. The reason was the constant refusal of treatment by the patient.
We had a commission that talked to Yulia Tymoshenko. According to the consequence of this commission, we had a conclusion that she has to be discharged from the hospital.
April 22, Sunday. Yulia Tymoshenko are back to the prison. The doctors of the prison visited her again at her appearance, but ex-Prime Minister traditionally refuses from the medical inspection. Next day, ex-Prime Minister wrote the statement to the prosecutor due to the injuries. Officially, the statement got to the prosecutor only the April 24 because of long bureaucratic procedure. That day, the defender, Sergei Vlasenko, declared the fact of the injuries. In any case, the investigation started yet on April 23. The general prosecutor, Viktor Pshonka, gave the appropriate order to the prosecutor of the Kharkiv region, Gennady Tyurin. The lawyers of Yulia Tymoshenko insist that her removing from the prison is the political intrigue. First, Ukrainian governance should immediately judge Tymoshenko for her second case. Second, they know that blaming Yulia Tymoshenko without her presence in the court won't be perceived by the world community. This could be the cause to the international court found this case again as unlawful and the judgment as an illegal action. And the third note, they had to transport Yulia Tymoshenko formally to the hospital just to be able to say that she refused from the treatment again, and she was there, to show to Europe and to the international community that we do everything they tell us to do. German doctors said that she should be treated, and international court made this decision. Well, we did it, but she refused. Once the Tymoshenko's letter was published, the informational bombs began to appear following. Such as an ombudsman Nina Karpachova on April 25 said that Yulia Tymoshenko's cell neighbor Yulia Abaplova disappeared from the prison. The administration of the prison denies this information, demonstrating the application of Yulia Abaplova to move her to another place. The penal service says that the woman just got tired of psychological stress caused by the constant visits of prosecutors, doctors and deputies. Then a new information appeared that those persons who moved Yulia Tymoshenko from the cell are already outside the country. Such assumption was made on April 25 by the deputy of party of Batkivshina, Andrei Senchenko. This idea was actively used by media. Nevertheless, on April 26, the first deputy head of the prison, Andrei Kovalenko, and the safety deputy chief, Andrei Paramey, were answering questions at the briefing, and they both deny the fact of beating, insisting that they were escorting Yulia Tymoshenko for a few times already, and no excesses happened before. We declared that Yulia Tymoshenko had been moved to the hospital. One time it was on January, next time on February. So every time when she left the prison at the ambulance car for examination or for treatment, every time I was helping her to go downstairs. I was personally escorting her in the car. I also accompanying her during her stay at the hospital.
Спуститься до кареты скорой помощи, сопровождал во время движения, также сопровождал во время лечения, обеспечивая ее охрану.
I was protecting her and helping her to get back to the room here in the prison. This time everything was in the same way as it was before. No force was applied. You can perfectly see my physical statement. So everything is just stupid talks and insolent false.
Вы видите, в какой я физической форме. То есть это просто глупость и наглая ложь.
I officially declare that in our institution there are about 1,000 women now. To neither one of them, I have to emphasize this, to neither one of them isn't applied physical force, was never applied and will never apply. And how this could invented that to Yulia Tymoshenko, to a woman with such a status, was applied any physical force? It's just impossible, I'd say. The prisoners have doubts about the possibility of Tymoshenko beating. They notice the very high status of ex-prime minister.
Counting on that she is a former prime minister, there is a very good attitude to her, and if it was really bad, we could probably more tolerate to her declarations. But we are really sorry about this situation, because not each prisoner has such liberties as she has. The simple former prime minister is beaten in such way. What could I say about other prisoners? Everything is just false.
The situation about the hunger strike is really interesting too. According to the Yulia Tymoshenko declarations, she stopped taking the food yet April 20, protesting in this way against the situation, quote, that exists now in Ukraine. But she didn't write any claims yet about it. According to her defenders, this prevents her from the force feeding in the prison. So, the hunger strike is declared for the whole world, but it's impossible to prove that Tymoshenko doesn't it. Ex-prime minister still doesn't let to the medical examiners to inspect her, and on April 26, the photos of Tymoshenko bruises finally appeared on the internet. From the well-known conclusion on the internet that was signed by the former medical examiners from Kiev with the surnames Selin and Sitnik, follows that the bruises were inflicted 4, 5, 6 days ago, and they learned this only from the photos of the bruises. At the special press conference, the head of the Department of Forensic of Kharkiv Medical Academy of Postgraduate Education, MD, Professor Alexander Gurov, criticized this conclusion, noticing that it is not correct to make such conclusions just looking at the pictures. But in any case, all conclusions should make a forensic directly study the areas of body of Yulia Tymoshenko which have bruises, say experts. But she continues to refuse it. This raises the question, why? At the same time, few questions more. For example, why Tymoshenko wrote in the letter that she was unconscious and recovered from the stupor only at the hospital, but everybody who transported her to the hospital and to the room there said that she was awake and quite calm. Experts say that after such events, the person is under the shock. Why the woman that just was beaten didn't ask doctors for help being at the ambulance car or came to the hospital? Why she didn't tell about it? Why Yulia Tymoshenko didn't apply to the prosecutor on April 20, the day when she was illegally beaten? And why did she wait for 2 days more to do this application finally? Putting the end of the story, it's the business of investigators, medical examiners, prosecutors and judges. And we just can make our own decisions, wait for news, getting surprised or angry because of this event. That's our Ukrainian history, but it's a little sorry that it has such a dark shades. For the first time about the bruises on the body of Yulia Tymoshenko declared her defender Sergei Vlasenko yet on August 18, 12/11, when she was in Lukyanivka jail. I saw these bruises. I am not a doctor, but it seems that her blood vessels burst. The bruises are big and all over the body. It was impossible to find their nature.
Approximately in 1 week that the court started, the symptoms with the unknown nature began to appear, something like the bruises on the skin.
At the same time, yesterday, for unknown reasons, the health state of Yulia Tymoshenko began to deteriorate to extremely bad way. The bruises appeared all over the body. She asked to don't tell about them to the medias. From time to time till the January 2012, any information about the bruises on the body of Yulia Tymoshenko appears again and again. it was made an assumption that they are the consequence of poisoning by chemical element thallium, but she refused from biochemical blood analysis. We don't know the results or the reasons of this hemorrhage. We will ask for making an independent examination of blood again. April 2012. The bruises appeared again. The poisoning by thallium doesn't confirm. Who or what was the reason of their appearance this time? Yulia Tymoshenko is still refusing from the forensic. It seems the two most important mysteries from the last years in Ukraine are the poisoning of Viktor Yushchenko and wired bruises on the body of Yulia Tymoshenko.